We're breaking down what led to dominant days for James Cook and Joey Bosa against the Jets today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I am your host of Locked On Bills. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Locked On Bills is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Well, folks, welcome in. I've taken the time to study the ALL-22 coaches film from the Buffalo Bills 30-10 Week 2 win over the Jets, and I want to share my top takeaways with you on this episode. We're also going to discuss the injury situation coming out of the Jets game. We have already heard from Sean McDermott on Monday, and so we'll talk about that later in today's episode. But I want to start with the tape and what the tape revealed regarding this Bills win over the Jets. And obviously one of the big storylines was the success that the Buffalo Bills had running the football. They had 43 rushes for 224 yards and 3 touchdowns. And, of course, James Cook with a huge game, 130-something yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns. And there's a lot of elements to this that I think are important, but I want to start with the tight ends. The Bills played tight ends like crazy. I mean, probably, I would guess most snaps 2 tight ends, a lot of snaps 3. They put those tight ends on the field, all of them. Knox, Kincaid, Hawes, and they did work in the run game. I mean, they were instrumental in how the Buffalo Bills were able to run the football, whether it's, zone runs and they're widening lanes or they're crashing down a side of the line to set up cutback opportunities for James Cook's certain plays where they're actually pulling into gaps and lead blocking. The Bills masterfully incorporated their tight ends into this run scheme and created displacement with them. They got movement, but you got to think about the stress that those players invoke because now you have extra gaps, right, based on your formational strength. And it really widened the Jets defense out, created additional gaps, and these guys open lanes. And I think the star was Dawson Knox. I mean, he was blasting open lanes left and right. Hawes was phenomenal like he's been. And Kincaid as well. Now, they use Kincaid a little bit differently, and they should, right? He's not the blocker those other guys are. But once again, seeing him in space, he was instrumental on that Elijah Moore touchdown run, where he's a play side blocker. He's got to handle that corner, and he drives them probably 10, 15 yards. So you're seeing across the board impact from these tight ends in the run game. And obviously, structurally, this is a huge part of what this Bills offense intends to be. And it's pretty cool to see all 3 of them incorporated like they are. Now, that does mean you're seeing a lot less Alec Anderson in that jumbo tight end role, but I think that's okay. I think you get a ton of good blocking from Hawes, and then you get the receiving element, which is important as well. So the tight ends were huge. And this also invites some stacked boxes, right? The Bills ran into stacked boxes 35% of runs, which was the 3rd most of any team this past week. And despite that, the Bills are number 2 in EPA per rush. And the reason I bring that up is because it tells a good story about James Cook. James Cook, when I watched him in this game, the thought that kept going through my mind was, boy, the game looks slow for James Cook. And that is a massive compliment. You don't pull off the 44-yard touchdown run that he was able to pull off without the game slowing down to the point where you can navigate that type of a situation with multiple cuts and being able to work into adjacent gaps and read leverage on the fly and just adjust. It was phenomenal. But you saw that repeatedly throughout this game where his elusiveness, his ability to, jump or lateral step multiple gaps to get into a spot where he can run the daylight was just masterful. He's becoming a really exceptional zone runner. And that's probably not fair enough. He is an exceptional zone runner. And he was phenomenal against zone, had 13 zone runs, over 8 yards per carry on the zone runs. And a lot of good scheme, a lot of good blocking, a lot of very good running by James Cook, not just to be productive, but it's how he's gaining that productive. Sure, there's good blocking, but James Cook makes that blocking right. And boy, was he phenomenal against the Jets. The game looks slow for him, and that's what allows him to make all these dynamic runs. I also thought the Bills did a good job mixing in zone and gap runs. That's important. We talked about how silly it was that the Steelers can literally only run zone, and that becomes a lot easier to defend when there's not enough multiplicity with how you run the football. The Bills are not that type of team. They're multiple with the run scheme. And I thought there were some really unique angles baked into the blocking schemes. You're talking about working in these tight ends, and the Bills did a good job of allowing these tight ends and really, all of their blockers to have advantageous angles to create movement and then just trust James Cook to go to work. It was a beautiful job of running the football. So phenomenal rushing output from the Bills in this game. Let's talk a little bit about the passing game. Obviously not a super efficient game for Josh Allen. He's 14 of 25 for 148 yards. I think there's a number of things that go into this that are worth talking about. First of all, I think the number one talking point is you go into this game expecting a lot of man coverage, and the Bills got a lot of zone coverage, which, even I kind of fell for that. If you remember the primer episode, I said, it's an Aaron Glenn defense. You know what you're going to get, man coverage and blitzing. Well, Aaron Glenn said, you know what we're not going to do? The thing you think we're going to do, we're going to give you a lot more zone. We're going to give you a lot less blitzing. In fact, the Jets had a 20% reduction in frequency of man coverage week 1 to week 2. They ran 50% man in week 1, second highest rate in the NFL. Week 2, only 29% man, 13th in the NFL. You got a 15% reduction in blitzes. They blitzed 35% in week 1. That drops down to 20% in week 2 against the Bills. So the Jets definitely gave the Bills a different look than I think they were expecting. And I'm sure the Bills came into this game, all right, we got to have man-beating pass concepts, and they got a whole lot of zone. So what else derailed the passing game? I think, that's probably the biggest thing. And then it's, you had 2 Dawson Knox drops. And you got to think about that. When you have those drops and you don't get another fresh set of downs, that takes away from your production. You're talking about another 3 downs at least for Josh Allen if you make some of those plays. You had the goofy offensive pass interference call on Keon Coleman. It takes away another set of downs, and it takes away a completion. So think about that. It's 3 completions, and not only 3 completions, 3 potentially long completions, but also you lose out on another set of downs for Josh Allen. And so I think those were big contributing factors in kind of where this passing production was. And then I'll also say that it felt like there was a lot of traffic around Josh Allen's feet. The pockets weren't super clean in this game. And because of that, I don't think it allowed Josh Allen to stay in some of the progressions that he wanted to, where things were coming open. And that's because, there's things going on around his feet, and he had to kind of navigate some of that stuff, which pulls his eyes from being on the defense. And I thought that took away from some opportunities that were there in the passing game. So I think that's a big contributing factor as well. So you got a lot more zone than you were thinking. You got a lot less blitzing than you were thinking. You had some situational stuff, whether that's the goofy OPI call on Coleman or 2 Dawson Knox drops that take away from production and takes away a set of downs from Josh Allen. And then I think you had some quick wins by the Jets with their pass rush that had some traffic around Josh Allen's feet that didn't allow him to stay in some of the progressions as long as I think he wanted to. All right, coming up next, there is an element of this passing game that I'm very excited about that I think is close to taking off. We'll get into that and offensive snap counts here on the other side of it. So, folks, be sure to stick with me. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all the details, and Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. So like football players that sweat every detail, Mazda does so as well, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Folks, most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Monarch makes it simple to review finances with your partner. You can see budgets, goals, and spending activity in one place. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL. All right, folks, welcome back. I teased on the other side of the break that there was an element to this offense that I think is close to really becoming huge. And I think it's the Josh Allen to Joshua Palmer connection. You know, there was 2 catches in this game from Josh Palmer, one on a Josh Allen throw. It's a good play, dig route in front of Brandon Stevens, who was playing with way too much cushion, and it was easy pitch and catch. And, of course, the big play from Trubisky to Josh Palmer on Sauce Gardner's coverage. Trubisky was able to dot the I there. That was a heck of a throw. So he had 47 yards receiving to lead the team, but I just came away from watching this excited for where it's headed. You saw really good separation from Josh Palmer and good separation vertically. And when I was talking about some of the traffic around Josh Allen's feet that didn't allow him to stay in progressions, a lot of that was opportunities for Josh Palmer to make plays down the field. I think this is close. I like how Palmer's getting open. I like where Allen's eyes are to get to Palmer. I'm expecting there to be some big-time production very, very soon. And so it's a little bit like the Joey Bosa thing where I liked how he was playing. I liked the routes. I liked, how he was fitting into I liked how he was playing. I liked how he was attacking blocks, and, I thought he was ready to explode for a big game. I'm kind of feeling that way about Josh Palmer here. I think there should be some big, big production here in the very, very near future. So let's talk offensive snap counts here. The Bills' offense was on the field for 75 snaps. Josh Allen, 65 of them. Mitch Trubisky, 10. At running back, James Cook, 35 of 75 snaps. Ray Davis, 20. Ty Johnson, 19. Reggie Gilliam, 19. At tight end, Dawson Knox, 41 of 75 snaps. Dalton Kincaid, 36. Jackson Hawes, 35. And then you only saw 2 reps of Alec Anderson as the big tight end. A wide receiver, Keon Coleman, 38 out of 75 snaps. Joshua Palmer, also 38. Khalil Shakir, 37. Elijah Moore, 30. Tyrell Shavers, 25. Offensive line, Osiris Torrance and Spencer Brown played all 75. McGovern, Edwards, and Dawkins played 67. And then Cedric Van Pran Granger, Ryan Vandemark, and Alec Anderson came in for 8 snaps. Thought there was a little bit of some issues with the interior offensive line in this game. Felt like there was some quick pressure. I felt like there was some communication issues in the run game as well. It wasn't like catastrophic, but I'm used to that being a little tighter. And so I think this offensive line is still kind of coming together in ways that I maybe didn't expect to be the case. I'm not saying it's playing poorly, but I think there's higher levels for this offensive line to achieve that they showed us in past years. And I'm looking for that to come together as well. And so that should get you excited when you start to see some elements on your team that are close, right? And it's week 2. It's not supposed to all be perfect right now, but you think about this Palmer stuff. You think about where this offensive line can go. You like to see Elijah Moore and how he's kind of making a bit of a role here. You're seeing what Jackson Hawes is doing. I feel like the the opportunities ahead for this offense, right? They're building, right? It's early in the season, but I like where this is trending and where it can go and the opportunities that make a lot of sense for improvement and growth from this offense. All right, let's talk defense here. And, speaking of growth, I think you saw a lot of growth out of this defense week 1 to week 2. And I think we should really focus in on the run defense, where the Bills' run defense was phenomenal against the Jets. The number 1 EPA per rush defense in the NFL this past week, comfortably by like a big clip. And that's a big transition from where it was last week, where they couldn't stop anything against the run. And it's surprising, right? Ed Oliver was your best defensive player last week, and he's not available. It was just good team defense. You saw a front seven that was competing for gaps. You saw good secondary contained elements. You saw some well-executed run blitzes. It was just 11 guys doing their 111. They had an attitude about the way they played. There was an eagerness. These guys are assertive. They tackled unbelievably well. Only one missed tackle in this game. It was charged to TJ Sanders. That's it. That's unbelievable. I thought Bobby Babich called a great game, simplified things a little bit, which was necessary with all the young defensive linemen in this game. And I know that everyone's eager for some commentary on Deion Walker and TJ Sanders. And I mean this in the nicest possible way. They were fine. That's a compliment to them. They were fine. They weren't getting blown off the ball. They didn't overly stand out in terms of playmaking. They did their job. They defended their gap. And because of that, I think that enabled the other guys to really do what they're supposed to do, to allow that second level and even third level to play downhill and get into gaps and make plays. It allowed Joey Bosa to be the playmaker that he can be. I thought they were fine. I'd say the same thing about Daquan Jones and Zion Logue. It's just they did what they were supposed to do. It wasn't overly flashy, but because they were in their gaps like they're supposed to be, the defense functioned like it was supposed to. It was a good job. Good team defense. That's what I'd say about it. And, of course, the star was Joey Bosa. 7 pressures and a sack and 2 forced fumbles on 15 pass rush snaps. That is silly production. It's all working together for Joey Bosa right now. You watch the tape. This guy is on his game. On his game for sure. And the production that Bosa had, of course, he made plays and he deserves a lot of credit. Other guys were in the rush lanes like they're supposed to be. And when guys are rushing through their lane like they're supposed to be, the quarterback doesn't have anywhere to go and you can make plays. The coverage complemented extremely well. You're capping routes. You're forcing quarterbacks to work deeper into progressions. That allows the rush to get there. And Bosa benefited from that. It was just good team defense, which feels really good to say coming out of what we watched in week 1. Good, sound, 111th team defense. Comment here on Trey White. I know that it was his first game back. I thought he was very sound, and the physicality in the run game was what really stood out to me. And part of what the Bills did is they did some basic slanting with their defensive line, where they would slant into the formational strength at times and try to set up some opportunities. And that exposed Trey White and forced him to be a very sound D-gap defender, and he met the moment. 2 really, really nice run stops. Not something you typically say about Tre'Davious White. Of course, Christian Benford was unbelievable as a tackler in this game. Blew up the reverse, and then that tackle on Breece Hall on that third down. I don't know how Breece Hall doesn't get that. Well, the answer is Christian Benford makes an unbelievable tackle that doesn't allow him to get that first down. I thought it was a very sound game from Cole Bishop as well. Played fast, physical, in his spots. His timing was so much better in this game. Really, really, really good week-over-week growth from this Bills defense. Obviously, it's a different opponent. I get that. But you can only play the next game on your schedule, and I think this is a really important foundational part of this year for the Bills with this schedule ahead, right? You knew you get through Baltimore, things soften up, and I think that was your opportunity to kind of figure things out and lay a foundation for where the defense is going to go mid to late season. And step one in that happening is really good. You start to get some players back. build this defense, and I think it has a chance to be a really, really sound unit. One wrinkle that I thought was interesting is you saw Javon Solomon rushing interior gaps quite a bit, which is not something I had on my mind as a possibility. If anything, I've been talking a lot about Greg Rousseau getting those opportunities, so it's interesting to me that Javon Solomon did. But it makes me think a little bit about how Michael Hoyt can be deployed in this defense when he comes back. I mean, we could see some rush packages with Hoyt and Oliver on the inside with Bosa and Rousseau on the outside. That sounds good to me. But I thought that was an interesting layer. I'm not sure it was overly effective, but he rushed through his lane and was able to be part of the complementary effort of this overall defense. Last thing here on the defense, and we'll do defensive snap counts. The Bills continue to deploy the 5-man rush with a pretty good amount of frequency. 23% of Jets passing plays, they faced a 5-man rush. And look, when the game script gets goofy, right, you don't necessarily have to empty your bag. So I think that's a relatively high percentage when you consider this game was kind of out of hand. You didn't really want to show everything, especially in the fourth quarter. You had a lot of garbage time. You're not really going to empty the tank on what your defense can be. So I think you saw the intent of where that wants to go. And I think it'll be an exciting part of what they can unleash against Tua on Thursday night. All right, coming up next, defensive snap counts, studs and duds, and then we'll get into the injury update that Sean McDermott gave us on Monday afternoon. So, folks, be sure to stick with me. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I want to bet, whether that's spreads, over-unders, player props, building those same-game parlays, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. Makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little energy to your Sunday. And look, I love the profit boosts. I love to log into FanDuel in the morning and see what profit boosts are available, claim them, and then bet them and have some fun. And a lot of times, it's a game or something that I'm interested in, or sometimes it's not. I just want to get in on a 30% or a 50% profit boost. So check it out. If you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, folks, welcome back. Defensive snap counts. The Bills only played 47 snaps of defense, which they didn't play a lot of snaps. I think 56 snaps, maybe something like that in week one. There's not a single defensive player that's played 100 defensive snaps yet through 2 games. I think the most is Bishop. I think he's played 98. I don't think another player on the defense has played more than 90 snaps. Foil that against the Dolphins on a short week, right? They're coming to Buffalo. Their defense has played 137 snaps in 2 games, and they have 6 defenders that have played over 100 snaps. So short week in Buffalo, you got a Dolphins team that's played a whole lot more under those circumstances, which I think benefits the Bills. We'll talk more about that when we focus on the Dolphins, which will be more tomorrow. All right, 47 defensive snaps for the Bills. At defensive tackle, TJ Sanders, 23 of them. Deion Walker, 22. Daquan Jones, 22. Zion Logue, 16. See how light of a workload that is? I mean, you could see defensive linemen playing north of 50 snaps. These guys aren't even at 25. Defensive end, Epinesa played 26 of 47 snaps. Bosa also 26. Rousseau 25. Javon Solomon 23. Linebacker Terrell Bernard 37 of 47 snaps. Dorian Williams 30. Matt Milano 23. Joe Andreessen 10. At corner, Christian Benford 37 of 47 snaps. Cam Lewis 33. Trey White 26. Dorian Strong 21. Brandon Codrington 10. Jamarcus Ingram 11. Interesting, Dorian Strong went to the gunner role on the punt team. So he's a jammer on punt return. He's a gunner on punt. So it's him and Sam Franklin. Those are big spots for the special teams units. And then at safety, Cole Bishop, all 47 snaps. Taylor Rapp, 37. DeMar Hamlin, 12. Studs and duds. Spoiler, no duds this week. If I put you down as a dud, you had to be pretty bad. Like, you couldn't just, drop a pass. Now, if it's a high leverage drop or something like that, but I just didn't feel compelled to put anybody down as a dud. I don't think anybody was spectacularly bad enough for me to put you down as a dud. But we do have some studs. Joey Bosa, obvious stud. Christian Benford, stud. I think those huge plays that he made against the run were huge, and obviously the Jets didn't really throw the ball at all. Trey White, stud, had opportunities to defend the run. I thought his coverage was really sound. James Cook, obvious stud. Sam Franklin, obvious stud for what he did setting the tone on special teams. And then I just want to put the tight ends blocking. I think it's hard to put Knox in there because, he was unbelievable as a blocker, but 2 drops, it's not going to make you a stud. Hawes, phenomenal job. Kincaid, phenomenal job with the blocking. And so I just want to put tight end blocking as a stud because it was such a structural piece of why the Bills' rushing offense was so good. All right, let's touch on these injuries real quick. Sean McDermott met with the media on Monday afternoon. Of course, he was asked about Josh Allen's nose, and Sean McDermott was kind of joking about it. He said, "I don't think it got any bigger overnight." He said, "I think we're in a good spot." He says his nose always looks good to me. He was kind of chuckling through it. He was asked straight up if it was broken, and Sean McDermott said he didn't say. He's like, I don't know that. He said it was just gushing blood. So point being is I don't think there's any concern that this is going to be an issue or keep Josh Allen out or create any complications. Certainly, Sean McDermott didn't give us any indication on that. I am curious to hear from Josh. I'm curious to hear from Dr. Kyle Trimble on this, but from Sean McDermott, he was kind of chuckling about it, which not normal for Sean to kind of have that type of demeanor when talking injuries. Taron Johnson, Cam Lewis, and Shaq Thompson all limited participants in practice on Monday. So that's a good sign for all of those guys. We don't have the injury designation as of the recording of this podcast for Cam Lewis. So we'll follow up with that later. On Matt Milano, he is not practicing on Monday. Sean McDermott said he's dealing with a pectoral injury. And when asked about the timeline, Sean McDermott said, "We'll see." He didn't give much. He normally doesn't, right? So we know that Matt Milano won't practice on Monday, has a pectoral injury. Stay tuned on that. Ed Oliver not practicing Monday. Jordan Hancock practicing in full. So we'll obviously monitor those throughout the course of the week. It's a short week. So that makes for some complications with availability and all those types of things. All right, folks, there you have it. All 22 review in the book. And now we will focus on the Dolphins. So we'll have Bill Squad, 2 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday. That'll be our it's a weird week. So that will be the normal Thursday episode. So we're doing that on Tuesday. And then, of course, we're going live after Bills Dolphins on Thursday night. We still have the full primer to do. We got crossover Thursday with Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins. Final thoughts, predictions, all the stuff in the Substack. It's all happening here in this smushed week. So if you're part of the Substack or, obviously listening to this podcast, just know it's all coming, and it's going to come pretty fast here in a very tight amount of time. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. We'd love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.